Arcades Sabboth is one of the original Elder Dragons, and is a pretty interesting card in its own right. Normally, how I structure these videos is every day I do a color in Wooburg order, and then I do a colorless or land card, but for the next 5 days we're going to be talking about the Elder Dragons. Arcades Sabboth is a legendary Elder Dragon with 7 power and 7 toughness that costs 2 and 2 green, 2 white, and 2 blue mana. It has flying, and all your untapped creatures get +0/+2 as long as they aren't attacking. You can also pay a white mana to pump Arcades' toughness by 1. Oh, and if you don't pay a green, a white, and a blue mana during your upkeep, you have to sacrifice Arcades Sabboth. Now, you might be looking at all of that and think, wow, this card sucks. And you would be correct, but that's not really the point here. Arcades was released in Legends, a set famous for being weird, lax on color pie philosophy, and full of the worst and best cards you've ever seen. But this set was also the set that created the concept of multicolored cards and legendary creatures. Two, mechanics that are wildly popular today. There are 5 Elder Dragons, and we'll talk about them all, but today we're focused on Arcades Sabboth. Arcades is one of the weaker Elder Dragons, and its abilities are kind of next to useless. It has Castle stapled onto it, which I guess is nice, but not really a strong card by any sense. It also has Butt Pumping, but that also isn't useful in most situations. It does mean that Arcades can beat pretty much every other Elder Dragon if they crash into each other, and that's kind of cool, but it's still not usually a useful ability. If you were going to play Arcades in some kind of 60-card kitchen table environment, most of its abilities wouldn't really do anything. You'd basically just be using it since it's a 7/7 flyer in the colors that you're choosing to use. A 7/7 is pretty good, but this thing costs 8 mana and it's really hard to cast. Requiring 2 pips for 3 different colors that's a tall order, especially in a time before fetch lands. Overall, this card isn't strong, which is a shame because it sure as fuck looks cool. But let's be real, if you're playing Arcades Sabboth, you're probably playing some variation of Old Border Commander, be it 94 or 95 Commander, or Alpha to Alliances, or just Old Border only. In those environments, Arcades is okay. There are better legendary creatures in these colors that are easier to cast, don't require an upkeep, and have abilities that are more likely to be useful. But dragons are cool, and sometimes that's reason enough to play them. Bant also isn't a terrible color combo in old school Commander. Your mileage will vary with whatever ban list you're using, but being in Bant does give you access to blue cards and white cards, which give you the best control and removal tools. Those are fairly valuable traits. Green also has some of the best color fixing, giving you access to stuff like Birds of Paradise or Untamed Wilds. Overall, I would say Arcades is not the worst of the legends if you're going to play some variant of Commander, but most of its value lies in the color combination. Its abilities are unlikely to be all that valuable, but the toughness pumping does serve a pretty solid purpose in the specific environment of Commander, since you can crash into any of the other Elder Dragons and win that with an extra white mana. In 1v160 card, this might be the worst Elder Dragon, but honestly all of them are pretty bad. Still, this card is pretty interesting, and the lore around the Elder Dragons is really sweet. The lore has been changed and retconned a few times, and I've already yapped a lot, so I won't touch much on it here, but Arcades is usually the most reasonable of the Elder Dragons in the story beats, which does make sense based on its colors. I guess I should also mention that they fixed Arcades though. Arcades, the Strategist, is a card that came out in M19 and aims to make a more playable version of Arcades. And it succeeds, in my opinion. It manages to stick with the same thing that the original Arcades is trying to do, but it does a much better job of it. You can build a pretty funny Arcades wall deck with this card, and it's also cheaper to cast and gives you a real advantage by letting you draw a card when you cast a wall. That's pretty funny. It's not like super powerful in Commander, but I think it functions well in jank builds, which I think is a more fun play experience for a card like this anyway. But back to the plot, Arcades Sabboth was originally illustrated by Edward P. Beard Jr., and Edward did a bang-up job. I really like the old Elder Dragon arts, and I especially like the ones that show the dragons as being intelligent. Arcades Sabboth has awesome art, and I really enjoy this piece so much. Look at this dude, he's so fucking scary, and probably pretty wise. Very classic art. But I don't have too much to say about it. It would be a long time until they would reprint Arcades Sabboth with a different art, and that's mostly because the card sucks. But we did get this secret layer drop that was illustrated by Esper. This art is pretty fucking sweet. The stained glass style is really cool, and the art is well done. This particular piece takes more inspiration from the new Arcades art direction, but I don't think that's a bad thing. The new and the old Arcades Sabboth are similar enough that I think it's a pretty cool redesign. Anyway, I like this art, and the frame isn't bad either. I much prefer old border frame, but I don't hate this. The last art for Arcades Sabboth came out in Dominaria Remastered. This art was illustrated by Stephen Belladin, and this art slaps pretty hard. I think this is a fantastic representation of what Arcades is supposed to be about. He appreciates the structure of society and the efficiency of working together, and as a dragon he also likes being in charge. I think this art showcases Arcades in a really cool way. I do like the original art better because of the way that I am, but this art is great, it's super well done. But that's really all I have time for today. I'm really interested in what you think of Arcades Sabboth, so if you're willing to comment, I would appreciate it. As always, you can like the video if you liked it, you can subscribe if you give a shit, but either way, I hope you have a magical day. Thanks for watching.